So the O-line is bad, where things come to play really well in relief. Murray needs to be benched. I think they're just trying to find that right combination, and it's really too late in the season to be kind of messing around with that. But I think, I would, based on the way they've played, Swinson and Conjal should probably, at least if they're not starting, just in the rotation. Definitely. A lot of questions and comments here about the play calling. Defense is terrible ID. He's been on the bench. Has been a total. Let's pump the brakes on that. We'll just agree. We can just agree to disagree, Weston. I don't think Oklahoma's in a great position. Regardless, I think the game plan needs to be rely on your defense. Hope your defensive line is dominating. Rely on the run game, and then just give yourself a opportunity to win the game at the end of the game. That's the one thing that you would hope for. Yeah, we'll see, Cam. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if this is something that they'll actually end up doing or not. But I think it's something that, like I said, those three things are the things that I would look at, without a doubt. Keep waiting on you to. It's not going to happen this year. I think they are who they are at this point. I mean, I think you've got a team that can put it together. They've shown glimpses, but the team has not put it together for 4 quarters. They've not played complementary football all year. Now they could. I mean, they can do it at some point. I think they can do it, but they've they've not put themselves in position to play that complementary ball. And um, maybe this next week is the week, but it's not happened yet. Yeah, agree, Ryan. Good gun enough is not looking good. And as of late, I would say this game, I didn't think the defense played well, really, for at least half the game last week against Baylor. You give up 300 yards rushing. I don't consider that a good defensive performance. And I think Creed Humphrey is a much bigger loss on the offensive line than any of us ever thought it would be or care to admit, even at this point. Yep. I'm with you. Has the OU on both sides of the ball. Hey Barton, I appreciate you joining us. Like I said, I remember you well. I know that was a tough time for Oklahoma football, but I remember how well you played on that defensive line. So keep coming back and keep joining us. Yeah, give a shout out to Martin on here, guys. Let's see. It's a possibility, Cam. I mean, I wouldn't put that out of the realm of possibility. I mean, I think a lot will come down to based on what the playoff situation shakes out to be between Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, and what Oklahoma does in these two games. I mean, if they happen to split, or Oklahoma State happens to beat Oklahoma twice in these next couple of games, I think you've got, if Oklahoma, let's just say for all intents and purposes, Oklahoma State makes the playoffs. Oklahoma probably goes to the Sugar Bowl. Depends on how that shakes out. Unfortunately could be another game against Alabama, if that's what happens there. But I think they would be a large selection for if neither Oklahoma or Oklahoma State makes the playoffs, and maybe Oklahoma State is ranked ahead of Oklahoma, then maybe Oklahoma could be a large pick for one of the other New Year's Six Bowl. But that would absolutely be a good matchup, without a doubt. Caleb didn't get in here playing against the scout team. It shows when he misses by a public Cotton Bowl. Yeah, I don't think it was. I don't think it was a Trevor Knight moment. I see where you say that, but I don't think that, just because he continued to play well, in these games up until the Baylor game. He was like 14, 15 touchdowns, only one interception on the year. Trevor Knight never came close to that. So I don't think it was a Trevor Knight. I don't think it is a Trevor Knight situation. Um, and he's still developing. He will be I think he'll be a really good a really good team. Or sorry, he will be a really good quarterback. I think it just takes some time. And your vision improves the more and more you play, the more reps at the high level. So definitely, a lot of talk about Marcus Major. Not sure why he's not getting guys here. Um, it's good question as any. I don't know why he hasn't played as much as he has. Very little surprising to me. Um, could be a Fiesta Bowl team. You're right. Absolutely. You can talk all day long, but who is better gets determined on the field. Yeah, I don't know what that means. I mean, this is a this is a podcast. What we do is talk. So, I mean, you're right, but I mean, this is what we do. This is part of this is just discussion of the games. But yeah, you're right, but don't really understand the comment. Um, Decision is Wash had an easy schedule, could have played in Dallas for the playoffs. Chester, I think you're right in so many ways here. I think coming into the season, this is why I had this Oklahoma team as a really a playoff or bust, or even really I felt like this team needed to make a national championship game. Really big for the future of this program, and given where they are these next two games, let's just say worst case scenario they lose both of these games to Oklahoma State. They don't make the playoffs. They don't win a Big 12 championship. It's a massively and I mean a massively disappointing year for Oklahoma. I think right now, a successful year would be winning the Big 12 championship game or winning the Big 12 championship and maybe getting yourselves into the playoff conversation. But I think even if you're, an 11-2, 10-3 season is just really kind of unacceptable based on exactly what you said. The schedule played out really, really well for Oklahoma, just in terms of the difficulty or lack thereof. That's the reason why Oklahoma's point blank. The reason why Oklahoma's 10-1 is because of the schedule. The schedule has not been as strong, as in the past. So, yep, you're absolutely right. Defense without that won the game. Uh, why would Lincoln leave when he has a top 5 2020 class and the number 1 23 class, and he's going to the SEC? Um, I think there's a couple of things, Cam, where the reason why I'm not saying that he will, and I don't necessarily think that he will. Money, obviously, Oklahoma would be unwilling to pay him the amount of money that it looks like LSU is willing to pay. I think LSU is willing to do almost anything to win. I don't know that Oklahoma's in that same boat just because of kind of the politics within Oklahoma. I think the specifically OU's compliance department it does not do Oklahoma any favors on exactly what they're willing to let happen. I'm not saying cheat, but what they're willing to let happen. And so, I mean, and you're right. You make good points in terms of the recruiting class. Although I don't think Oklahoma's top 5 right now for 2022. I think they're in the 7 or 8 range. But I think Oklahoma, is probably a little bit easier to compete at the in the obviously in the SEC from a recruiting perspective. And I think the one thing to think about, Cam, is, and I know a lot of people don't want to think this, but it's going to happen. Oklahoma's going to take some lumps in the SEC the first couple of years. Whether it's next year or whether it's a couple of years down the road, they're just going to. Oklahoma's probably if Oklahoma's in the SEC this year, Oklahoma's probably 6-4 right now, 7-4 maybe, 6-5 maybe. I think so. I think Oklahoma's going to have to get a lot better these next 2 years to be able to compete at a high level week in and week out with the SEC because um, there's teams are much tougher. Texas A&M, Ole Miss, like Alabama, Auburn, like LSU, Arkansas. These teams are are gunning for you and they're ready to play every single week. We're not playing, Kansas, TCU, um, even Kansas State to a certain degree. So it's going to be tougher, without a doubt. Um, Baker's worst game against Iowa State and lost. This game was rough to play, especially for the first time. That's fair. That's a fair point. Um, Agree with that without a doubt. Um, What I think about Oklahoma State defense this year. So I think they're one of the best in the country. I think they're probably top 10, top 15 nationally. I'll pull this up in a minute, but I think Oklahoma State's defense, I think, and again, a lot of people might take this the wrong way. I think the way the Oklahoma State football team as a whole is what Oklahoma thought they would be this season. They were completely dominant against TCU. They've played really well. They started slow, but they've continued to get better and better and better every single week, on the defensive side of the ball, particularly. So, yeah, I think Oklahoma State's defense is really, really strong, and Oklahoma's going to have a hard time moving the football. Oklahoma's defense is going to have to play really, really well to keep them in the game. I have a hard time seeing Oklahoma getting more than about 24 points in this game, if I'm being honest. So the defense has to come ready to play and play very strong this game. All right, I think the defense is decent now. The late game woes you attribute to fatigue. Part of that's, yeah, I agree with that to a certain extent. I thought the scheme was pretty poor the last drive or two, keeping Kolar open, basically all drive, and they just kept going to him and going to him. It was Ryan's a little reminiscent of the Stoops game, the Mike Stoops game, where Baylor continued to run, these out routes all the way down the field and nickel and dime to Oklahoma. It looked like that to a certain degree, just in terms of allowing him to stay wide open um, through the whole um, through that last couple of drives. I assume this is very sarcastic and condescending in nature. Oklahoma expected to be no worse than 10-1 at this point, and if you look at this team and they are not a massive disappointment based on the way they're playing on the field, based on what they were expected to play, on how good they were expected to be, you're just not watching, and you're just not being realistic. This team is disappointing in the way they played. Now, having said that, they do have an opportunity to make it right these last two games, but to this point, this has been a disappointing season without a doubt. Okay, but when you say Notre Dame Wake Forest, so and so is better, get the game on the field and let the outcome. Okay, so again, they're not going to play Notre Dame. They're not going to play Wake Forest. They're not going to play all of these teams. So all we have to do is to talk about it. They may play one of these teams in the bowl game. Um, so all we can go by is talking about who we think is better right now. And I would say Notre Dame is better than Oklahoma. I think Notre Dame would beat Oklahoma on a neutral field. I think Oklahoma is better than Michigan State. I think Oklahoma probably would be able to beat them on a neutral field, and I think Wake Forest would be a really, really good game. And I mean, I wouldn't be upset to see Oklahoma play Wake Forest in a championship game. I mean, not a championship game, but in a bowl game. So looking at some of the scores right now, you've got just if you guys aren't watching, you got Alabama up 10-0 over Arkansas. You've got Michigan up 14-3 over Maryland. Setting up that game next week. Notre Dame is just obliterating Georgia Tech 45-0, just starting the second half. Iowa's up 20-16 in a game that's a little closer than I thought would be against um, against Illinois. Let's look down here. We've got Pittsburgh up 14-7 over Virginia. Wisconsin's up 14-7 over Nebraska in a game that you just assume is going to go down. You kind of go down to the wire here. Kind of below the radar game, but very kind of interesting for me looking at UAB and UTSA in the at Conference USA. UTSA undefeated so far. UAB up 21-14, second quarter there. Let's see any other games of interest. Cincinnati is really dominating this game against SMU 20-0 right now. So I think that those are most of the games of interest that you guys would have. Tulsa's up 10-0 over Temple in the first quarter at home locally. TCU and Kansas are tied at 7. And then UCLA is up 7-3 over USC in the Pac-12 rivalry game there. Um, so yeah, just like I said, just looking at this, if you're an Oklahoma fan, regardless, cheer for Kansas State tonight. You want a Kansas State win to at least solidifies Oklahoma's spot in the Big 12 championship game, regardless of what happens next week. And then obviously, you hate to cheer for Oklahoma State, but just you know don't don't cheer for Texas Tech, I guess is the best way to put it. So a lot of good games here down the stretch tonight. Oregon, Utah. You've got, as we mentioned, Oklahoma State and Texas Tech is at 7 p.m. I believe 4:30 is Baylor and Kansas State, so we can watch all that, and then got a lot of good games next week. Going forward, so for the rest of the year. Thanksgiving weekend is a always good weekend, and then uh, and then you have um, a championship weekend the week after. Hopefully, Oklahoma's playing in that Big 12 championship game. I think one of the things that's kind of interesting, it doesn't really mean anything more than that if Oklahoma makes this Big 12 championship game, this will mark Oklahoma has played a different team every single year that they've won or a um, played played in the Big 12 championship game. They've beaten TCU, they've beaten Texas, they've beaten Baylor, and then now they'll probably have that chance against Oklahoma State next week. Yeah, Ryan, we'll get into that a little bit deeper. I'm kind of with you. If I'm being truthful, I think based on the way Oklahoma played against Baylor, I had my doubts whether or not Oklahoma could win this game, but I think given the fact that it's at Oklahoma State, given the fact that Oklahoma State's better, and for the first time in a while, Oklahoma State will be favored in this game, probably by a couple of points, maybe a field goal, but I, Oklahoma State will be favored in this game. I think the one thing that there's a couple of things that you look at that could potentially be a positive for Oklahoma. Mike Gundy has performed very, very poorly against Oklahoma, just from a win-loss perspective. But his game plans and the way his approach has been really bad in the past. So I think the psychological edge goes to Oklahoma. I think the fact that Oklahoma State um, hasn't won a Big 12 championship from in the championship game format. They've only won that one a few years ago, 2011, I believe it was. They've not won since then. So I think it'll be interesting. Just looking at the players on the field and the talent on the field, I think that Oklahoma State certainly has the edge based on the way they're playing. But hey, if Oklahoma can find a way to put it together and play a complete game, then they have the opportunity to win this game. But yeah, I agree with you. It'll be tough to win as well. So